Namaste Utsoda.
Namaste Ajay bhai.
Good morning and namaste to Maya Durga.
Maya Durga,
Namaste.
namaskar, namaskar. She does
All right.
namaste.
So she's here. Our co-host is here. We are here. Utsoda, I want to welcome you and welcome all the viewers that we have today. This is Hindu Lounge, and this is Hindu Lounge episode number 32. So that
That's
this,
correct.
we have been now at this every week. We come live every week on Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern, and we are a project of Hindu PAC, which is the Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective. It's an initiative of World Hindu Council of America, or WHPA. And every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific, we are live on Facebook, we are live on Twitter, we are live on YouTube, and we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues. So that it has been, as always, there's always so much to talk about because there's so much happening when it comes to Hindus in America. It's almost, impossible to fill in an hour. I mean, almost fit everything in an hour. I mean, we always kind of try to go over. But I want to, I'll tell you why we have to stop exactly at noon today, because it turns out that there is our sister organization, the Hindu University, has a really nice event that is scheduled at noon. So we will end sharp at noon so that all of us can then go and attend that event. So with that, I want to just mention the 3 topics that we have picked for today among so many others, but we have picked 3. There's a specific United Nations resolution about the culture, tolerance and harmony and stuff like that. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the Brahmin Bailout Oped that Wall Street Journal of all the newspapers published. So we'll talk about that. And we will also talk about the appointment of Neera Tanden, the first Indian Hindu American to the cabinet, actually. So she has the distinction of being the very first cabinet appointee. So these are the 3 issues. And with that, Utsada, I want to welcome Maya Durga, and I want to welcome you and give you an opportunity to say your opening remarks.
Thank you, Ajay bhai. And, Maya just insists on being part of the show. I guess she finds it intellectually stimulating, at least, to say the least. And, I hope that she will be keeping her discipline more or less. Maybe occasional interjections may come from her side. She's 1 year old, so can't fault her too much for it. It's a packed show, Ajay bhai, and you're right. I mean, every week we think that hopefully nothing is going to be happening, and then we will have a shorter show. But every week we end up having a really, really long show with a lot of things happening and a lot to discuss. And this week has been no different. And we think of putting everything into 1 hour, but we always end up more than an hour. So, and on top of that, if people choose to call, we share the numbers usually in our groups, and then it's even more fun because then we have a lot of people participation, which we always enjoy. So yeah, I think this week has been very interesting in the sense that the United Nations, this is known globally. This has been probably a 200-year phenomena, but it keeps repeating itself even in this modern post-identity, post-colonial world, where the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims came in together and said, "Hey, we're gonna talk about protecting the interests of our religions." No mention of Hindus, no mention of Buddhists. And this is United Nations, one of the most august bodies in the world, where nations of the world unanimously participate and give each other equal opportunity. So that says a lot about where the world is. And, in the post-Marxist world, we always thought that religion has no place. And, for the last 100 years, people have been telling us that, oh, we have moved beyond religion. But I think some things die hard, and this is a very, very good example that no matter how we talk, how we act, how we think we are progressing, religious identity and exclusivism is a real thing, and it will continue to be so, at least in this millennia.
So that before you go too far, let me invite our our viewers to dial in. And I just posted the phone numbers that people can use to dial in, and we would welcome their participation. We welcome them to join us. So that I am going to share my screen because I want everyone to look at the resolution. I think we will do the, then we'll talk about Neera Tanden, and we'll talk about the Wall Street Journal article. But here is the actual United Nations resolution. And it is really, in many ways, it's very eye-opening as to how, how a body, you say it's an august body. I think it's a body that is pretty much becoming irrelevant now. I mean, I don't know how much, they have no power. There are only there are really only a few you know you know things that United Nations does that ever even are meaningful. There are very few countries who contribute in any way to United Nations. So, but here it is, when it comes to being Hindu phobic, again, they all kind of come together. And here's the resolution. And the resolution basically, as I mentioned earlier, hopefully you can see my screen, but the resolution is promotion of interreligious and intercultural dialogue, understanding and cooperation for peace. Now, so that this is a resolution that was co-sponsored by Pakistan and Philippines, as you can see. And this is the resolution that says that the Christians, Muslims, and the Jews have been persecuted. No, absolutely no mention, Utsada, of any dharmic tradition. And this Jai Shankar, who is the Foreign Minister of India, pointed it out and said that, look, UN resolution speaks only of Abrahamic religions. Why this selectivity? And it's kind of interesting that these resolutions have been proposed, Utsada, since 2006, and they're doing the same things since 2006. And they always go back, and I don't know if you can read this, but it says it always recalls the previous resolutions, and none of the previous resolutions mention dharmic traditions. And I think I come across a really interesting, commentary on it. And this was in Swarajya magazine, and they rightly point. And also this is something that the Indian ambassador to the United Nations pointed out. And he said a draft resolution said that it deeply recognizes recognizes with deep concern the overall rise in instances of discrimination, intolerance, and violence. And it talks, as I said earlier, and you said it, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and Christianophobia. Okay, it also includes a phrase referring to prejudice against the persons of other religious or beliefs, giving the impression that members of the non-Abrahamic religions do not face intolerance. Utsada, the whole Bamiyan Buddhist, monument was torn down. In Pakistan, the Hindu girls have been abducted and forcibly converted. And Hindus are, and for just an allegation of blasphemy, people of dharmic traditions are killed in Pakistan. In Bangladesh, the Hindu villages are burnt down. In Afghanistan, a Gurudwara is attacked and 25 Sikhs are killed. With what straight face can United Nations exclude dharmic traditions from the resolution on some other kind of religious discrimination, intolerance, and all that? Isn't this resolution itself indicative of prejudice and Hinduphobia and dharmophobia?
Absolutely. So there are a couple of points I want to make about this United Nations resolution. And the reason, I think the most important takeaway from this resolution is this end of the delusion that many of our so-called progressives, so-called liberals, so-called secularists have, where they genuinely believe that the world of the crusades and the worlds of the caliphate and jihad is over. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I should give to these people around the world. And there are quite a few. I mean, majority of the Indians are that way. Majority of the Hindus are that way. Majority of the Americans are that way, probably. So the takeaway is that religion is here to stay. Geopolitics based on religion is here to stay. It never went away. It will never go away. A Marxism, which is an antithesis to the Judeo-Christian religion, may come up for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, be equally bad, and then go away. But the larger geopolitical systems that have been operating over the past 2000 years will stay, and they will just change in the use of technology and verbiage. Language changes, technology changes. That's all that has changed. Nothing else has changed. And this United Nations resolution is a perfect example of that. So if our so-called liberals, our so-called secularists, whatever you want to call them, and when I say our, I mean Hindus and other dharmic systems, they believe that they live in a post-religious world where they will all all the leftist bullshit that comes out. No, you are always going to be the same that you are, which is you are a dharmic heathen, as the biblical people will call them, or a dharmic kafir, as the Islamists will call them. And that's how they will look at you. If you look, and that is quite institutionalized in people's memories. This, as I said, I mean, you said, Ajay Bhai, that UN is not an august body, but the UN is the only place in the entire world where all the countries can still sit together under a common flag, under a common understanding, under the common roof. They may be ineffective, but it's still there. And to have a place like the UN clearly call out that there is a difference between the so-called revealed faiths, the three Jerusalem faiths, as they call it, Abrahamic faiths, and the rest are all worthy of whatever, and they don't count, which is 2 billion people in the world, by the way. Dharmic faiths, 2 billion people. This is a perfect example of that. And if our left liberals, around the world don't wake up to this, I think they won't. I mean, I have been proved right many times before. I used to think that once ISIS came into the scene, the left rebels would wake up, and some organization with the name Islamic State in it would wake people up to the real threats that the world faces. It didn't. So I'm not surprised if this doesn't wake them up either.
But the only heartening thing here this time was that actually, we don't have a pseudo-secular government in India. And the government of India actually quite eloquently took this issue up in the United Nations and spoke about it. So that you have picked this a clip, and I'll just play this and let me know if you can hear the sound. But this is a really good. I'm so glad that we actually have a voice of some kind at the United Nations. Otherwise, for a decade, this kind of stuff has just gone unanswered. So,
and it needs to be noted, I mean, before you play this, that by taking up the cause of the dharmic faiths, which we're all born in what is today called India, India has become the de facto representative of more than 19 countries in the world. I mean, the Asian countries which follow Hindu dharma, Buddha dharma, and Shinto dharma, and all these dharmic traditions that came out from the same philosophy. So that is actually pretty impressive. I think by isolating India, if Pakistan thought that they would, bring together the Judeo-Christian faiths and put them under one umbrella, they just managed to make India the leader of the dharmic faiths, which is actually not a bad thing, given that there are 2 billion people who follow Hindu and other dharmic practices.
Yeah, I mean, close to 1/4 of the humanity, about 1/3 of a humanity, right?
Correct. So yeah, I mean.
So that's a little less than 1/3 of the humanity here.
Exactly.
So let me play this clip and see if you can hear. Don't hear the sound, let me know.
India has called on the United Nations to take a direct stand against Hinduphobia and violent bigotry targeting the Sikhism and Buddhism. India said that UN General Assembly has failed to acknowledge the rising hatred and violence against Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism, and underlined that the culture of peace cannot be only for Abrahamic religions. India's permanent mission to the UN, Ashish Sharma, spoke about the draft resolution on the freedom of religion or belief that named only the 3 Abrahamic religions, which was sponsored by 33 European countries. The draft was approved last month by the third committee, which deals with social, humanitarian and cultural issues. According to the draft resolution, the General Assembly recognizes with deep concern the overall rise of discrimination, intolerance and violence, and specifies only cases motivated by Islamophobia, anti-Semitism and Christianophobia. The draft resolution also includes a phrase referring to only prejudices against persons of other religions or beliefs, giving the impression that members of non-Abrahamic religions do not face intolerance or violence. Ashish Sharma said, there were disconcerting trends in the world of today. He queried about selectivity by United Nations. He said, culture of peace cannot be only for Abrahamic religions. And, as long as such selectivity exists, the world can never truly foster a culture of peace. The UN is not a body which should take sides when it comes to religion.
All right, so I'm going to stop it here, Utsada, and stop the share as well. But I think we have said enough on this issue. I think that this is the last time we see this kind of Hinduphobic, dharmophobic, resolution coming out of United Nations. A lot of people like me have, increasingly lost faith in United Nations, and this, if this continues, I don't think United Nations people will have faith in United Nations, and they will not be a true representative of the people who they are supposed to be representing. So I think hopefully this is the last we have heard of this.
Ajay bhai, I just wanted to add something more to this. I think the fact that this has been brought up again and again, begs the question, and this is an important question, and this is probably what India did at the United Nations was probably a precursor to a bigger move, which should be ideally, why don't the dharmic countries have a confederacy amongst themselves? It is important that, instead of looking at geographical identities, instead of looking at economic identities, I think it is time that India and Japan and the parts of China that believe in dharma, the Taiwan and all these countries who have dharmic predominance historically come together. Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Nepal, all these countries come together and create a dharmic confederacy and let there be a united voice. And you will be surprised how quickly the Pakistans of the world will rethink their games if this happens.
So there's a simple reason why it is hard to do. And the simple reason is that most of the dharmic countries, first of all, none of the countries are Hindu. Okay. The only Hindu country in the world was Nepal, which is no longer a Hindu country. So they're all secular, and except countries like Japan and Thailand, and these are officially Buddhist countries. I think it's a great idea, but I think that a lot of nobody has any qualms about India have granted an observer status in Organization of Islamic Countries, OIC. But the same people, and even more, will be down in the streets doing chakka jam and blocking the streets in Delhi, blocking the streets in Mumbai, and protesting all over India. If India
and blocking the streets in Canada and San Francisco.
And of course in Canada and San Francisco, and they'll be passing the resolutions in Minnesota if India were to join, or create a confederacy of Hindu or dharmic states. So let's call it confederacy of dharmic states. And I don't know if at this time there's enough political will among countries like India and Nepal and some of the other surrounding countries to actually, put on a label. Mauritius, Suriname, none of these countries, Seychelles, none of these countries which are nominally Hindu majority countries would take on and join, create a dharmic confederation. Japan may, but even in Japan, I don't think you'll find a lot of grassroots level support for that. And therein lies a difference between the dharmic faiths and the Abrahamic faiths. The dharmic faiths look at the dharma and the practice of dharma in a very different way. We have never looked at it as a political tool, whereas the Abrahamic religions always looked at it as a dharma as a political tool. We always said that politics should be practiced with dharma, but we didn't say that we will use politics to further, the our faith or way of life or any of that, right? So it's the opposite philosophy, and that is where I think there's going to be a challenge. As much as I love your idea, I don't know in short term there's political will to do this.
Oh, I agree. I agree with your assessment too. I believe this is just the fact that the government of India stood up to this bullying and discrimination is a huge step forward. I mean, if it was, any other government before, even 5 years ago, they would have just kept quiet. They would be like deer in a headlight, because they don't know how to deal with these issues, and therein lies our the effect of our colonialism, that we have faced over the last many centuries.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, and I think, but it is a step in the right direction, and it is also important that our viewers understand this, and in their own little ways, we begin to form this alliance in our own little sphere of influences. It's also important that we think about the world, if we rethink the world. If we were under any impression that there is going to be a post-religion world, in my understanding, there can be post-technology worlds, where the old technology gives way to new technology, but there's never going to be a post-religion world.
So that to that point, Sant Gupta ji, who we both know and who is very active in interfaith, activities, he has posted on the chat saying that as long as Hindus and Buddhists stay inactive and do not speak out proactively, such developments will continue. And we could not agree more. So that let me pivot to the next topic that we have, which people will find it even more fascinating, if there is such a thing. And that is, this is an interesting week where the first Hindu American or American Hindu and first American Indian, Neera Tanden, was announced as a cabinet appointee for as the cabinet, in the upcoming Biden administration, and she would be heading up the Office of Budget and Management. And the lot of congratulatory messages going around and all of that. And I want to just share something with you. Before I ask your view, I want to ask you, is this really good for Hindus, or is it now one more way to beat Hindus up? So let me go to this particular slide and see what you have to say. So here is Neera Tanden, all smiles. After all, she is the biggest. Anyone who gets a great honor. But here is a quote from February 2020, when she was heading ultra-liberal think tank called Center for American Progress. Now, we should acknowledge that Neera Tanden, arose from, a single-parent family which had to stay on the welfare. She's a self-made person. Nobody handed her the achievements that she had. She worked hard for it, and she achieved what she has achieved. And hats off to her. She, understandably, she is liberal on the social issues, and because she has gone through tough times in her life, in her childhood, and we have absolutely no problem, as we have always said in this show, that we are agnostic to conservative or Republican style of or democratic and liberal style of politics. We are a pro-Hindu, American Hindu advocacy group. And so we take, we have no, in this particular show, we don't take stand against, her liberal views or someone's conservative views. But when it comes to Hindus, we have ideas and we have opinions, and we are vocal about it. So here is what Neera Tanden, when the CAA, the Constitutional Amendment Act in India, which actually appropriately it should be named as Protection of Religious Minorities in Indian subcontinent, like the minority, and giving them accelerated residence in India. These are the people who are persecuted in Afghanistan, in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, and other countries, and they flee this persecution and they come to India, and to give them accelerated residency in India, right? And this is what Neera Tanden had to say. She said the US must be leading voice in standing up for democratic values and human rights, including protection of religious minorities. I urge the Trump administration and the rest of the international community to condemn the violence in Delhi. Violence, by the way, instigated by people who were paid by ISI and people who were paid from Qatar. And now the lot of proof is coming out. We did a whole show on the Delhi riot book, the WHPA did, and there's so much evidence that money poured from outside. And these are the people who want to basically, these are the people who are in India, they would call Tukre Tukre gang. These are the people who want to break India into multiple pieces, right? And here is Neera Tanden, who has no clue, absolutely zero clue about what is going on in India, reads some newspaper or talks to her, her friends in India who are part of the Tukre Tukre gang. And she says that to condemn the violence in Delhi and press the Indian government to protect all persons in India, regardless of religion. India is the most tolerant country in the world because Hindus are the most tolerant people in the world. And then she went on to say that the violence against Muslims in India is horrifying and destroys India. Most of the people who are killed in religious violence in India, if you look at percentage wise, are Hindus. They've been attacked every day. Recently, they were attacked in Bangalore. Hindus were attacked in UP. And this is a country where 83% of the people are Hindus. And here is Neera Tanden. I don't even know what she knows about India. Goes out and criticizes India's intolerance without knowing a single thing about India. Ulsada, your comments.
Well, there are two points I want to make here. The first point is that we did not include the Trump factor in this. The entire riots in Delhi were orchestrated, run, and promoted globally in the media on the day Trump was visiting Delhi. So the international players you mentioned, whether it is Pakistan's ISI, whether it is Turkey, whether it is Qatar, all these entities, all these global power players got involved in promoting violence in Delhi through their media outlets, through money, through real money, which obviously you mentioned the investigation that has come out and it's quite evident. All this was done to coincide with President Trump's visit to Delhi. So Neera Tanden, being a Democratic Party spokesperson, Democratic Party, operative, if I can put it politely, in those days even more so, her non-profit, the NGO she represents, the think tank she represents, is fully aligned, publicly aligned with the Democratic Party. She had to come up with something that would be critical of Trump as well. So I think the statement you are looking at, completely untrue, completely anti-Hindu, completely anti-India, and far from being honest, has a motive behind it. And that motive is to also target Trump as much as to target India and Hindus. So I think Neera Tanden probably is one of the, Washington, D.C. is full of those people and think tanks. They're the tail that wagged the dog. And in this case, Neera Tanden is a perfect example. The statement she made is a perfect example of the tail wagging the dog. It's part of a bigger initiative. There is a reason why many people in the world are fed up with the so-called swamp in Washington, D.C. And nothing represents that more than Neera Tanden.
Yeah, and so hypocrisy, is just is something that is unique to politicians in some ways, because you can probably speak from two sides of the mouth, and people just don't even notice or don't even care, because that's just way of life for politicians. So here is Neera Tanden. I don't know if I showed you this slide before I put it up here. So this is Neera Tanden on Nikki Haley when she won the primary in for the governorship in South Carolina, and she said, Consider this, and this is a direct quote from Neera Tanden, consider the separation of church and state. Haley had a Sikh wedding alongside her American one. Juggling two is no easy task. I had a Hindu ceremony, Neera says about herself, in addition to an American one. But during the primary, she described herself several times as a Christian and implied publicly that religion was important to her theory of governance. Now, the same Neera Tanden, Utsoda, is a huge supporter of Kamala Harris. And what does Kamala Harris say about Hindu Dharma and her her Hindu roots? She doesn't mention it. Or she says that I grew up in a mixed family. She never says I grew up a Hindu. She said my mother took me to temples, but she doesn't say I practiced it. Kamala Harris says she invoked her Christian. So USA Today says about Kamala Harris, she invoked her Christian faith, Baptist faith, multiple times on the campaign trail, including nods to liberal theology and the parable of Good Samaritan from the New Testament. There are umpteen examples of Kamala Harris talking about her Baptist faith, her singing in the choir, but she never said that she grew up a Hindu. She said, well, my mother took me to mandirs. Now, we as American Hindus and American Hindu advocacy, we think that both are wrong. Okay, I think that the fact that people like Nikki Haley and people like Kamala Harris and people like Bobby Jindal and people like Ami Bera abandon for political reasons, not because they had an awakening, a religious awakening, or they saw the light, but they saw the political light. They had a political awakening, and they decided that, if I were to not be a Hindu, I'll get more votes. And they abandoned their Hindu dharma. We are against all such politicians, whether it is, and all such politicians in that aspect. We're not saying we are against a person, we're not saying against their policy, but that aspect of the person. So we have criticized Nikki Haley for giving up, touting that, oh, now she's a Christian. And we have said that about Bobby Jindal, and we are saying that about Kamala Harris. And we will give Neera Tanden a credit that she's not a politician who's running for election, but at least this quote indicates that she has not abandoned Hindu dharma, but to accept Kamala Harris and to reject Nikki Haley for the same thing sounds hypocritical to me. What do you think?
Absolutely. And I think you touched again, these things are individual choices, but it is important for us to dissect the reasons behind those individual choices. And this drives home the point again that as much as we talk about a post-religion world, liberal world, non-conservative world, blah, 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 all these things are quite secondary behind very fundamental religious identity politics. And Bobby Jindal and Kamala Harris and even Neera Tanden represent that mindset. Some in more subtle ways than others, but they do. And I mean, we have discussed Kamala Harris ad nauseum in this program over the last month and a half. When Kamala Harris never claims to be a Hindu, she's very honest. She knows that there are far fewer Hindu Americans, and this is where politics comes in. It's far fewer Hindu Americans than there are African Americans. And for the longest amount of time, I mean, it didn't help her politically. It backfired on her. But before the elections, she was trying to be an African American. And which denomination do African Americans follow the most in Christianity? It's baptism. And the USA Today article where you mentioned, you show it's the liberation theology, not liberal theology. The liberation theology is a very you mentioned it as liberal theology.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Yeah, it is.
Liberation theology is a very African American oriented church.
Yes,
I call it dogma. As most things are in Judeo-Christian, it's a African American directed church dogma that has been popularized in the civil rights era amongst the African Americans, and the fact that Kamala Harris chose to talk about it the most, shows that she was making a constant effort to reach out to the African Americans. And now that she's the vice president, let's see how she acts, and what her future. I think she may run for president someday, or she may stick with that. Eventually she will figure out a way to call herself an African.
Yeah. But we'll see how her nomination goes. I think she is a close associate of former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and she is catching opposition and flack from both sides, from Republicans as well as the progressive Democrats, and she has been, pretty colorful in using language against Bernie Sanders on one hand and Mitch McConnell on the other hand. So I don't know if she's going to get the nomination or not. Let's
She's a
see.
Hillary Clinton acolyte, and I think Biden choosing her so early on is a nod to the more establishment camp in the Democratic Party, and I think Neera Tanden represents the establishment. She, as Trump calls them, she represents the swamp. She's a Hillary acolyte. She makes it through. Biden checks a box there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, once again, I think, credit where it's due. A self-made person who made it to the cabinet. Not easy being, not easy being a, growing up as she did with a single mother who was on welfare and achieving what she did. So while we congratulate her for that, I think we are going to have, all kinds of disagreements with her. And as Hindu Pact, we will actually make a decision, and we will announce it on this show, whether we are, as Hindu Pact, if we are going to endorse her nomination or not. Hindu Pact will take an active interest in opposing people who have spoken out against Hindus, and she has spoken out against Hindus. So we are apolitical, but we will not tolerate anti-Hindu sentiments in the Biden cabinet. And she is a representative of anti-Hindu sentiments in the Biden candidates based on her statements from February 2020. So then let me go to the next topic, which is even more fascinating, if you can believe that. So this, let me lay a little bit of groundwork on this. So you know that ever since the election cycle started, Senator Elizabeth Warren, who represents the ultra-liberal camp. She's from Massachusetts, and she competed with Senator Sanders, Bernie Sanders, to claim the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, or socialist wing, or more appropriately, the socialist communist wing of the party, whichever way you want to put it. They have been asking for student loan forgiveness, that all the people, all these students, anyone who has taken loans to go to college, their loans, college loans, and according to Senator Warren, Elizabeth Warren, up to $50,000 of student loans should be forgiven. And she says that this would be the biggest, stimulus package. Now, I won't go into the merits or demerits of that. Suffice it to say that most of the Hindus that I know go out of the way, don't take vacations, don't lavishly spend the money so that they can send their kids to college, and without taking a lot of loans. And now these Hindus are now going to be scratching their heads and saying, why did I ever do this? I could have gone on the same vacations that other people did, and I could have enjoyed life like other people did, and I would have my child's loan would have been forgiven. So I was a fool for working hard, saving the money, and not borrowing the money to send my child to college. Regardless, let's not talk about that, because that's a topic for some other day. Now, so this bailout talk has been heating up because now that President-elect Biden, I mean, now that he is a president-elect, and now all these groups, pressure groups, if you will, are pressuring him to say that, hey, remember that loan forgiveness, got to forgive the loans. So, and by the way, as we were talking, I got the alert from CNBC, and this is amazing. We are just talking about it, and just an alert came up on my screen from CNBC that Vice President Biden is considering loan forgiveness. So we have to do a show on this sometime. But regardless, there is a journalist, so-called journalist, who wrote an op-ed in Wall Street Journal, and he called this bailout a Brahmin bailout. So the Brahmin bailout. Okay, so let me share the screen with you, and I want to see what you have to say about this. So canceling student debt would be a Brahmin bailout, and it's written by Zahid Jilani, who is from Georgia and who is of Pakistani origin. Okay, and now very cleverly, he does not say that he is saying that. He is quoting a research scholar who has said that the liberals who go to graduate school and who have become, the people who have gone to colleges and gotten degrees and gotten graduate schools and have become liberal are replacing the working class, the laborers and other people who constituted the Democratic Party or constituted the liberal kind of thinking and labor thinking and other things. They are being replaced by this educated class. And because this educated class is being bailed out, we should call it the Brahmin bailout, because after all, Brahmins represented the learned community in India. This is wrong in so many ways, and it is Hinduphobic in so many ways that it is, it's unbelievable. I mean, it promotes the fact that, first of all, it ignores the fact that 70% of the people, I think it's 66% of American population at one time or the other goes and takes college courses or goes to college. Okay, it's not like the 3 and 5% minority. Second thing is, there is no such thing as birth-based caste system, which Zahid Jilani is trying to promote. I mean, this is, we had a whole show, we talked about multiple times about Varna and Jati, and what he's trying to do is propagate this, oh, Hindus is all about caste narrative. He's also giving legs to the, the overt Hinduphobia practiced by the state of California and Brandeis University by saying that there is a huge caste problem. And we talked about the NPR doing a series on caste issues in America. So he is basically propagating that in a very subtle way by saying that, look, I mean, there exists caste. And now you have a voice in Wall Street Journal, not NPR, which is, more liberal bent, but now you have a voice in a so-called conservative newspaper. And you're now propagating this among conservatives, this narrative that Hindus are all about caste. So, Utsoda, take it from here.
Well, a couple of things here. I think Zahid Jilani is one of those journalists, and I see quite a few of them. Occasionally happen to be of Pakistani origin, unnaturally insert a Hinduphobic anti-Hindu narrative in any geopolitical American socio-political discussion, because it offers them an ability to target Hindus. And that's something that I've been observing amongst Pakistani American origin journalists a lot, because there are quite a few of them. They're born and brought up here, so they are very sophisticated. They understand global issues quite well, unlike those who are inside Pakistan, who are far more brash and unpolished about their presentation. So this is another one of those, and we need to call out the fact that Zahid Jilani has been doing this for a while. So we need to go back into his roots of Hindu-phobic targeting. He was one of the original media outlets, media activists who targeted Representative Tulsi Gabbard for her connections to the so-called Hindutva movement, and her outreach and interaction with some of the BJP leaders who came from India to visit. I mean, BJP is a political party, one of the largest political parties in the world, and fully democratic setup. So Zaid Jilani targeted Democrat Tulsi Gabbard for that, and he targeted her for being close to Hindutva politics. So he has a track record of Hinduphobia. Interestingly, he also started off targeting Jews and had made early on quite a few anti-Semitic comments, but was immediately, there was a blowback, and he had to publicly apologize for his anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic comments. So Zaid Jilani apologizes after being anti-Semitic because he faced pressure from the Jewish community. I think the Hindu community needs to keep up its activism in highlighting the Hinduphobia that many of these individuals like Jilani propagate. Hopefully, he will apologize to the Hindu community as well for being so overtly anti-Hindu and unnecessarily inserting Hindu narratives which are negative towards Hinduism in his article on American politics. And I think there's a lesson to be learned from the Jewish community in the way they are proactively and aggressively calling out anti-Semitism. Hindus should do the same thing, and maybe they will be able to extract the apology from Zaid Jilani as well. And I think even if that doesn't happen, we need to keep up with the calling these people out, just like we are doing now.
And he is very pro care. I mean, care is care is not pro Hindu. I mean, in fact, quite the opposite, right? So
yeah, that's the point I'm making. Like, he has a track record going back at least 5-6 years of looking for opportunities to push the Islamist agenda, but he's also quite sophisticated and knows the narratives that are out there. So when he gets called out or he takes a wrong move, he kind of tracks back and tries to use it in the best way he can to still suck up to the ideological bosses that.
And look at this. I mean, so he says that Trump designating the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorists would be a massive victory for extremists.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like, this is the exact kind of statements that come out of Pakistan. They're all, yes, we are engaged in terrorism, but don't designate us as terrorists because then we'll do even more of it.
Correct.
What kind of
it's exactly what the narrative that Al-Qaeda used to give at one point in the before September 11. It was like, just let Al-Qaeda operate the way it is operating. Calling them terrorists will actually make them even more terrorists.
Yeah, what is it? Is this a threat to the world, or what is it? I mean, here is the Muslim Brotherhood. They're designated as terrorist organization by just about any rational person that we know, including a lot of Muslim countries. And here is Zaid Jilani taking up their cause and saying, don't designate them as terrorists or extremists, because they'll become even more extreme. What is more extreme? They're already extreme, right? What can be more extreme than that?
Exactly. No, I agree with you. And that's why it is, important to, I'm very heartened by the fact that Hindus got together and called him out on this. And I hope some of them who are watching this show will also be able to see some of Zaid Jilani's previous activism and previous positions, and they would be able to add on to the protest. And I think that will be helpful, because this guy is no spring chicken here. He's a seasoned anti-Hindu activist.
So I have a different question for you. Why did the Wall Street Journal publish this? And Wall Street Journal has been doing this recently quite a bit, right? Because if you think about it, Wall Street Journal has published things from Sadanand Dhume and other people, which are, and quite a few other things that are not particularly, favorable to Hindus. So what's up with Wall Street Journal?
See, I think Wall Street Journal represents establishment mindset in Washington, D.C. It doesn't necessarily represent the Democratic Party establishment mindset, but it certainly does represent the establishment mindset in Washington, D.C. And there has been a, you know, Hindus have been out of the establishment favor since the day they decided to stand up for themselves politically in the Indian subcontinent. And that has been happening over the last 10, 12 years. I mean, once you decide to do that, you will earn the ire of establishments from around the world. And Trump probably was far more, that's why, Trump's 4 years of presidency probably benefited Hindus globally, especially in the Indian subcontinent a little bit, because he was not from the establishment. That doesn't mean the establishment is anti-Hindu. All it means is the establishment finds it a little jarring that a community that has been colonized and that has been subjugated and anglicized over the last 400 years, 500 years, first beginning with the Islamists and then with the Britishers, that community is beginning to generate and reevaluate its civilizational compass and is beginning to revive its civilizational narrative. It's 7,000-year-old civilization standing up for it, reaffirming it. That does no establishment likes another new thing to come up globally which has a powerful identity. And I think Wall Street Journal, the Economist, the BBCs, these guys, they are feeling a little unhappy about it, and it comes out through their sepoys, as Rajiv Malhotra calls them. The Dhumes, Sadanand Dhumes of the world. They bring out the uncomfortable feeling that they have.
Yeah, I think again it points to also the fact that Hindus have not been good advocates for themselves in America.
Hindus are busy making money trying to send their schools to
we had
the good schools here.
Well, that is true, but also we had this discussion last time, Hindus are spending a lot of money. It's just not in the right places, and they're happy with the photo op they get, and they're happy with they get a nice picture with the presidential candidate or with a senator that adores their adorns rather their living rooms and family rooms and offices, and they're very happy with that. They don't need anything beyond that.
I once met a gentleman and visited a house whose every room in his house was filled with a photo with a senator or a congressman or a president. And I'm still to find out what he actually did having all that personal capital with these individuals.
Yeah, see, so I would rather take a picture with you because you're doing something good for the Hindu community.
I think you are in a very small minority. I'm flattered, but you are the only other two people who would want to do that is my wife and my little daughter.
By the way, I was going to tell you that the way she is preparing for the show till 2 a.m. and then showing up at 11, I think your job is in jeopardy here. I mean, I know that's not a job because you're not getting paid, but I'm just saying that even the unpaid position she's going to take away from you at this rate. And
I will be happy to have my 2-year-old daughter do this show.
And I also think that she can replace probably both of us and have more people watching it than people are watching us.
I know. I mean, she's one, and I think I bring her here because I hope that because she's a 1-year-old kid, people will watch this show more.
Yeah, no. I'm telling you that we would both become redundant in about a year or so when she starts talking and in a few months and picks up all this. I think our job is done. We have to move on to something else. So now let me as we come towards the end, I know we are going to be 5 minutes over, but I have to make these quick announcements of several things that are coming up, and I would be remiss if I didn't do that. So now on Saturday, this is our Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week, actually. We are trying to promote Hindu Pact, as we all know. This is the show that is a project of Hindu Pact, and Hindu Pact is having its very first fundraiser. And I'm glad to announce, and I'm really, really happy to announce that Representative Tulsi Gabbard has accepted to be the keynote speaker, and we'll talk more about it next week. But Hindu Advocacy in America Towards a Strong American Hindu Voice in the Public Square. This is a program, an event that will happen on December 19th on Saturday, and with Tulsi Gabbard as the keynote speaker. There's registration details we will be posting, but basically we will be, please do join us. On Saturday, December 12th, another initiative of World Hindu Council of America, Support a Child, is doing a program called Hindus of Kerala, Past, Present, and Future. It is their yet another fundraising event. Their goal is to get 3,500 people supporting them. They are now up to about 1,600. So some ways to go. With this program, we are hoping that they will close the gap. So please learn something about the Hindus in Kerala. They call it God's own country for a reason. And this place is now under threat, for last several decades. So please join the Support a Child project and learn more about the Hindus of Kerala. There is a town hall that is co-sponsored by World Hindu Council of America's New Jersey chapter. It is Indian. It's a Q&A on Indian visa and OCI. So people who are even not of Indian origin, but they want to go to India for religious pilgrimages or yatras and other things. Please join this and get your questions answered about how to get visas, OCI, which is the Overseas Citizens of India card, and all of that. There is this is somewhat of a conflict, but we're trying to resolve it. But starting today, every other Sunday, first and third Sunday rather, from 11 to 12, the World Hindu Council of America has a retreat, 1 hour retreat called the Hindu Mind Retreat. And they're looking at the book called The Hindu Mind by Bansi Pandit. And they are going to discuss various topics related to Hindu Dharma as represented in that book, as starting out from that book. So again, it directly conflicts with this show, but we're trying to resolve the conflict and see if we can stagger that event. But please, if you're interested in that, please do join and sign up for our newsletter and you can get all this. The other program that we are promoting as World Hindu Council of America is Swachh Devalay, the clean mandirs. You can see our president of World Hindu Council of America, Dr. Abhay Asthana, and the vice president of World Hindu Council of America, Shyam Tiwari ji, are both joining this program. The program happened, but it was recorded and it is being played. Nate Natesan, who is based in Atlanta, Georgia, has made this his life mission to make sure that the mandirs are clean and so swachh, and as all places of worship should be. We will do a much more extensive coverage of Swachh Devalaya, or clean temples, in one of our upcoming shows. And finally, the program that is just starting, or just started 2 minutes ago, we request all of you to join, is the Dharma Civilization Foundation and Hindu University of America has their annual fundraising event today, a fundraising gala. We urge you to join that on Zoom. Please do join that event. Once again, Professor Ved Nanda, who is the chair of the Board of Trustees of World Hindu Council of America, Dr. Manohar Shinde, who is the president of the Dharma Civilization Foundation, and Dr. Abhay Asthana, who is the president of VHPA, are all headlining and speaking at the event, along with Sri Soumitra Gokhaleji, who is the pracharak and the head of the Hindu Seva Act Sangh in the countries outside of India. So I would urge everyone who is watching this to join. And with that, Utsoda, the final thing for you, and that is the Hinduphobe of the week. So please talk about it while I bring up the slide that you have picked on the Hinduphobe of the week.
So as most people would be knowing, today is December 6th. It's it's a historical day in terms of the fact that in the modern post-colonial era, this is the day when probably the largest number of subaltern, disenfranchised community in the world, purely from a grassroots movement, rose up and reclaimed its historical identity. It is the day when the Babri Masjid, or the Babri structure, as we call it, was taken down. One of the most important symbolic gestures of grassroots subaltern communities bringing up their identity against colonial rule. This happened in 1992 on December 6th. The reason I picked what the Hinduphobe of the week is because around the world, globally, representatives of Islamic colonialism, there's a convert to Islam named C.J. Werleman, and he has featured previously in the Hinduphobe of the week. He's an Australian gentleman who has worked as a journalist embedded with Al-Qaeda groups in Syria and is a convert to Islam. He has been taking up the issue of rebuilding the Babri structure, a symbol of colonialism, Islamic colonialism on the Indian subcontinent and on the 1 billion Hindus of the world. He has been running this campaign, and he today, because it's the 6th December, he started social media campaign in which they're trying to bring up a cause for rebuilding the colonial structure. So I think C.J. Werleman is the Hinduphobe of the week, and he has featured on this before. As I said, he runs a vicious global campaign on social media to target Hindus around the world, and that's why we chose this day and this person to be the Hinduphobe of the week.
And also, that just out of curiosity, I'm sure that he is okay with Bamiyan Buddhist, monument or statue or murti being taken down, right?
I believe as a convert to Islam, he really endorses the theory of breaking down dharmic structures. That I have never spoken to him, but that is my understanding, I guess, because most fundamentalists, I use the word fundamentalist very carefully here, in the Islamic world are, because it's part of their socio-political agenda. That's what they have thrived on historically. They really believe that they need to destroy temples and build mosques on top of it. And they have done that in Turkey. They have done that in the West. They have done that in Central Asia. And they have done that in the Middle East. And they have done that at least a couple of thousand times in the Indian subcontinent. So I don't
actually 50,000 times, but I think
so
48,000, but that's okay.
So that's, I believe C.J. Werleman as a convert to Islam would support that kind of hatred coming from his community. So I think he is quite happy to see Hindu temples being destroyed and the Bamiyan Buddhas.
And some of those same people were actually responsible for taking down the statues of Mahatma Gandhi as well. So that I know we're flat out of time, but I want to thank you once again, and I want to thank all our viewers for joining us today. Today was our, as I said, our 32nd episode. We love doing this, and we love talking about Hindu issues in America. And we are so glad that hundreds of people every week join us, and then hundreds more watch the recording of this show. So on all the platforms combined. So we want to thank you very much and wish you a great week ahead. And with that, this is once again, this is Hindu Pact presentation called Hindu Lounge, and we come live every week on Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern. And this is a live call-in show. We always want you to call. Don't be shy. Please call in. Please participate in the show. We want to hear from you. But, it's always great also to talk with you about these issues. And I thank you very much. And I please thank Maya for me as well. This is, but thank you very much. This was a great conversation as always. Thank you, and namaste to everyone.
Namaste, everybody. See you next week.